Boss, is that you? Malcolm called when we heard the sound of whistling ring down the hall from somewhere across the basement floor, like a dog owner calling out to his dog. My flashlight's beam flickered as I aimed it into the darkness of the basement in that old corpse of a building. I stood in the doorway of the custodial closet and looked as far as the light could reach, then looked back at Malcolm. "Fuck that guy," he said as he turned back to me. "He can jackass around if he..." Malcolm was cut off by the sound of whistling as it came down the hall once again, this time drawn out a little longer as if to say, "I'm waiting." The building didn't have power, so we were stuck in the dark with flashlights. He looked down the hall into the dark and sighed. "I'll be right back. I'm going to go see what our genius employer is up to." I couldn't blame Malcolm for being so annoyed with Leo. This recent contract he took was far too big for just a few people. Even for a full professional cleanup crew. The job was for us to clear out the old building of a large hospital. The place was left in a state of disrepair, apparently after an accident. We were expected to have it cleaned out and prepared for proper renovations within 1 week. We arrived around midday, joining our boss and 4 other co-workers who had started that morning. Our boss explained over the radio that the others were all either on break or performing their own tasks around the building, but we could go ahead and get started. He sent me and Malcolm down to the basement, and we hadn't heard from him or any of the others since we started. We had finished the day by scrubbing down the walls in the basement and were just dumping the murky, grimy water we had left over down the drain in the old custodial maintenance closet. I was cleaning the grit off one of the brushes when I noted how long it had been since I'd heard more than the splash of the water I was using. I turned and aimed the flashlight down the hall. It was obscured in the dark, but I was certain I saw a figure step around a corner and into a darker hallway just before the beam of light reached it. "Malcolm?" I called out. I heard the faint sound of rustling around the corner. I hesitantly took a few steps forward and listened. I took a few more steps forward and peeked down the hallway around the corner and jumped back from what I saw. 2 dark figures stood against the wall. I immediately calmed down, recognizing these as 2 shadow portraits. They must have been the last 2 left after we finished scrubbing the walls clear of them. I scanned the hall with my flashlight to find Malcolm on the floor a few feet further, identifying him by the long dreadlocks that covered his head. He rolled around on the ground, clutching his side. "Malcolm, what happened?" I could hear him weakly muttering his response, barely more audible than a whisper. I wanted to believe that he tripped and hurt himself being clumsy, but couldn't justify settling on that conclusion. I knelt down next to him and turned him over to look at his face. He whimpered and his eyes fluttered, giving me the impression that he was close to losing consciousness. I pulled the radio from my hip to call our boss. "Leo, there's been some sort of accident. Malcolm needs medical attention." "What the hell do you mean there's been an accident? What, did he decide to taste test the cleaner or something?" I responded, noting the sound of panic in my tone. "I think there's someone down here with us. We heard Dismissing my concerns, he cut me off, stating, "Those were just shadows on the wall, Daryl. You 2 can scrub the last 5 off when Malcolm gets off his ass." I began to snap at him about the seriousness of the situation as I turned back to the shadow portraits and froze when I saw something that made me shut up and rethink everything I thought I knew. My breath caught in my throat and I spoke more out of wonder rather than actually looking for an answer. "How did you know there were still 5 left?" I stared transfixed at the 5 remaining shadows on the wall as several details of this strange workday suddenly became impossible to dismiss. There were indeed suddenly 5 shadow portraits on the wall. I knew for a fact that there had only been 2 just a moment before, but I had also been sure that we finished scrubbing the wall clear less than an hour before. "Leo, how could you know how many shadow portraits were left?" My question was answered by the sound of Malcolm screaming. I turned to see him being pulled into the dark. I aimed my flashlight up, attempting to reveal his attacker, but the light flickered and dimmed. I could only see an obscured, towering figure dragging him by the leg. The darkness swallowed them both as they fell out of the light's reach, and I fell backward, tripping over my feet. My flashlight hit the ground beside me, and its beam of light flickered again, then died. Suddenly in the dark, I scrambled across the floor, searching for the light. Malcolm's nightmarish, tortured screams continued down the hallway, drowning out the sound of my own panicked breathing. When his screams stopped, I knew what that meant. I'd have to take my chances in the dark if I'd ever get out of there. I stood and looked up to see the hallway suddenly brightly lit and inexplicably clean. From around the corner behind me, I heard the sound of complete chaos, panic, and gunfire. I took in the change in my surroundings, looking for an explanation, and cautiously stepped around the corner. I knew that I'd have to go through that area to reach the exit and wanted to avoid running into that creature again. I walked back down the hallway and watched as a catastrophic event played out in front of me. Passing one room after another, I saw patients in hospital beds being brutally stabbed, beaten, or strangled by masked men in clothes bearing a crudely drawn symbol. In the hallway, going completely unnoticed as I passed by, I saw one group after another of hospital staff being lined up along the wall and executed by 3 gunmen. As I got closer to the stairwell, I saw the same symbol drawn in several places along the hallway walls, as well as on the faces of several dismembered corpses. They had been piled high beneath the large mural featuring this one symbol, which was drawn in blood here, with several smaller characters drawn beside it. A masked man doused the bodies in gasoline in preparation for some ritualistic finishing act to this sanity-eroding display of human cruelty. Dazed and losing my strength, I got up the stairwell and stumbled out into the first floor. My knees buckled and I dropped down on all 4. My vision blurred and I struggled with the feeling of disembodiment as I watched vomit pour out into the floor. When I looked up, I saw 6 shadow portraits on the wall in front of me. They stood there staring me down, 2 of them torn to shreds. One of them, not even having legs, posed as if it had been dragging itself across the floor. The one right in front of me crouched down over me with hair that hung down in thick cords like dreadlocks. I began pushing myself back to my feet when I heard it for the 3rd time. Behind me, someone whistled out from the stairwell. I turned to see the space beyond the threshold of the stairwell entrance darkened. Over the doorframe, a large figure stood and watched, still obscured within the dark.
What the hell are you doing? We still have work to get done downstairs.
Leo's voice questioned me from the dark, but the thing that was imitating him gave itself away. The voice came out distorted, gravelly, and too deep. I didn't wait to see what it would do. I just ran. I turned toward the one exit at the building's rear and hoofed it as fast as I could. As I ran, the building interior darkened and shadows appeared on the walls ahead of me. Some of them I recognized as the shadow portraits that Malcolm and I scrubbed away during our work. The whole time I could feel a cold sensation biting at my heels. I shot through the exit doorway at breakneck speed and turned to see if my pursuers had followed. The sight behind me made me shudder. The entirety of the space beyond the doorframe was shrouded in darkness, and 2 glimmering beads shone back at me from far higher than any person could stand. I turned away, unable to confront whatever it may have been in there. As I walked back around the building to the gate, I could feel the stares of countless pairs of eyes trained on me. I made my way to the hospital's main building, unable to break free of the grip anxiety had on me. I spoke with the hospital faculty, unsure what to do next. I never had to consider how I'd explain what happened to my coworkers. The hospital staff had no idea that a cleaning crew had been sent to the building. Apparently, there were never plans to renovate it. Not knowing who the caller was or how to contact them, I gave up and called myself a ride home. At that point, it was obvious that we weren't sent there to get the place clean. The next day, I got a call from Leo. He scolded me for leaving the job and demanded that I come back or forfeit my check. I hung up and had my number changed. I I tried to get back to what I'd call normality, but that's not possible anymore. I was certain that I'd be safe having left that place. I had believed it was a simple haunting, but I was wrong. Every once in a while, I hear the whistling from the other side of my apartment door. When I look through the peephole though, all I can see is darkness.